see you all.
This is Phil with Senator Sanders, and this is John Tracy with Senator Leahy.
Hello.
So I think we took your seats. Do you want to sit down?
No, I'm fine standing up.
Well, somebody's
John, you
got
want
to
to sit
sit.
here?
You have the head of table, you're driving it pretty well.
So,
How do you want to proceed, Jennifer?
well, I wanted to first hand this out to each of you guys. These are the things from the Fairfax group. We're not just Fairfax here, we're from all around the state.
Great.
And we are, one of the things we were just discussing this is there were so many things that we wanted to discuss. As you all know, your staff fields my personal calls every single day. And they're just like, wait, I forgot something, I have to call you back. So I mean, it's so long. We wanted to start with the concept of the Constitution, which is, I think, overarching for everything that we're doing and is a good way to start. I feel like it's a little hokey to stand here and read it, so I'm not going to do that. But I think what we were talking about, and that we each had stories I think that we wanted to share, and that might be a way to go around. Do you guys want to do it that way? Let's do that then. We are very concerned that our basic American ideals of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and equal protection under the law are at risk right now by our own government. And that is what is motivating us. We have a very long and growing list of ways that is happening, but that is what we want you guys to defend and support. And we understand that that is going to be very hard for the next few years. So, with that having been said, I think the two issues to start with are going to be issues regarding immigration and how they're impacting Vermont, and the ACA, and opposing that repeal while strengthening it. Do you guys have anything to say? Otherwise, I think a lot of us have stories to share. Would you like to jump in?
Tell you what, can folks come in? Can we close that door there?
It's so hot.
John, if it gets too hot, well, yeah, if we can keep it, that's fine. See how we do.
There's a lot of people by the door. Sorry.
Well, listen.
There's a lot of people by the door.
Thank you so much for organizing this, for that introduction, and we can get into issues. John and I are the state directors. John Tracy from Senator Leahy's office, Phil Fiermonte with Bernie Sanders here in Vermont. And so, number one, welcome to your senator's office. I think sometimes we don't do enough of this, and this is what democracy is about. So I just want to congratulate everybody for being concerned about our democracy, about the Constitution, and organizing to come and speak to your elected representatives. This is what it's about. I really appreciate you being here. I know, speaking for Senator Sanders, we share the very concerns that you raised about this moment in our history. It's a very perilous moment, and I think the very fabric of our democracy is at stake with the election of Donald Trump and the way Donald Trump was elected. We can talk about that. There's a lot of investigations going on around that. But I think, speaking for Senator Sanders' office, and I know the other delegation members are in the same place, we will do everything that we possibly can to defend the Constitution, to defend freedom of the press, and to defend the rights of American citizens. I think Bernie has said over and over again, very concerned about the tenor of Trump's campaign and his administration. I think the cornerstone of his campaign, Bernie has said, was bigotry. I think you saw that in his speech last night. Again, really using fear to create divisions in this society, and really scapegoating immigrants in a really ugly way. So we're not going to stand for that. And what we have to do, I think there's tremendous concern. We're seeing it all over the country. You saw it in the Women's March. Bernie's organized 2 meetings now across the country, getting people to turn out at meetings to oppose the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And we had 1,100 people last month at Burlington High School supporting that initiative. There were meetings all around the country. Senator Leahy and Congressman Welch's office were involved in those. This past weekend, there were 3 meetings in Vermont, again on that issue, organized by Bernie nationally as the outreach person for the Democratic Party caucus. We had over 150 rallies at members, representatives' offices around the country, tens of thousands of people turning out. So the good news is that Donald Trump has activated people in this country in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time. And that is exactly what we need. That's the antidote to Trumpism, if you will, at this present moment. And I think, we can talk, and I printed out some stuff that you can take a look at. I think this Indivisible group, I think it is the group that you've been working with or
We're
affiliated with.
a number of indivisible groups and
Yeah.
other groups.
And-
And I know
and-
a lot of us want your input from both of you on
Sure.
what we can do to support
Great.
you and what would be most effective.
Well, let's talk about that, but, I think Indivisible is doing some great work, former congressional staffers talking about how do you organize in your congressional district, what is most effective? It's really important that I think people think very clearly, and systematically about what's gonna work. This isn't about, being politically correct or having the most pure position. This is about, how do we defeat a reactionary agenda, in Washington. So, and I think, we're off to a great start in this country with the mobilization that we've seen. So congratulations, all of you, for being engaged. I think the challenge in the long term is taking this energy and this activism and turning it into political and electoral power. We have to win elections to turn this around. If that doesn't happen, we're not gonna turn it around. That's why we're in this place. So we've been very active. I don't know, we can't get into the political side, right? This is the Senate office, it's not a campaign office. We can talk a little bit about politics, but, we can't start telling you, who to vote for, or that sort of thing at this meeting. But I'll stop here, turn it over to John Tracy from Senator Leahy's office. Really glad that you're here, John.
Well, thanks, Phil. And again, the upside is people are motivated. The immigration issue, the Affordable Care Act, those are just the first two steps in what we'll be facing in the Trump administration. The big lesson is nothing in a democracy is permanent. And I think we've learned that. You can't just leave it to someone else to maintain. It requires constant care and feeding. On immigration, the delegation pushed back. Fortunately, we have a system in this country where the judicial branch pushed back at the executive order. I know our staff, we do a lot of immigration visa issues. The delegation has been working with the state of Vermont. We don't tell the state of Vermont what to do. We're trying to bring resources to help them with the policies that we put in place, because we know how important it is, not just to the dairy farmers, but to our country in general. We have a long, rich history of immigrants. On the Affordable Care Act, what's interesting now, the rallies and town meetings that Phil mentioned, and Senator Schumer and Representative Pelosi have encouraged those as well. Bernie's the outreach person for the Democratic caucus in the Senate. It's having an impact. The Kaiser Foundation just in the last week, there's a favorability rating of 48% to 42% for the Affordable Care Act. Now that's new. That's the largest favorability rating since they started tracking it. Up until now, it's always been kind of nip and tuck as who liked it, who didn't. Well, so what the rallies and town meetings have done, they have changed the narrative. In fact, amongst independents, it's now 50% favorable, 38 unfavorable. But because people understand what they have and they're afraid of losing it, so they're coming together. So that's a step in the right direction. But we have more things that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. Voting rights, women's rights, our environment, our relations with foreign countries, public education. So immigration and the repeal of the ACA are the first two in what are gonna be many acts. And there will be roles to play going forward. And now, there are, again, rallies, town meetings do play a role, but it's what do you do beyond that? How do you put it in action? And I've been stealing from Dana Milbank lately. He wrote a great piece about what you can do. Part of it, he says, stay healthy. You're gonna need your health through this. Join a group, but he also gave an example. If you're involved in a local organization, whether it's a political organization or an organization like Indivisible, we're in a blue state to where we get it. Reach out to those groups, similar groups in a red state, and have them reach out to their members of Congress. We get calls all the time, and for the most part, this delegation sings off the same hymn, so we've been lucky. But a Vermonter calling Chuck Grassley in Iowa ain't gonna do anything. But someone from Iowa calling Chuck Grassley is gonna have an impact. So, whether it's a sister city relationship, but start working with other states to work on that stuff. So we're very engaged. You are making a difference. I think the transition is, where do you go from here? And it's always easy to agree at something to 50,000 foot level about what the policy should be. As you get closer to putting it into practice, that's when it's really hard to keep people together. Those of us who spend time in legislative bodies understand how difficult that is. That's gonna be the challenge. But the upside is, it has been a wake-up call. People are engaged, so it's maintaining that momentum and what we do with it going forward. So we appreciate the fact that you're here. Always love the input, and our bosses paying very close attention to what Vermonters are concerned about. So thank you. It does make a difference.
Thank you. Are you hearing anything from, the pro-Trump side of things? Are you getting any feedback from that? Has there been any pushback?
Well, I would say in Vermont, overwhelmingly, what we're hearing from people who call and email us is in opposition to the Trump agenda and supportive of what the senator and the delegation are trying to do. But yeah, no, we hear some of that. I mean, Trump got 30-something% in Vermont, and what I would encourage people to think about also is that Bernie's view is not that all these people vote for Donald Trump, they're all racist and misogynists and blah, blah, blah. You get some of that. No, many very decent, good working people voted for Donald Trump who are really pissed off, they're angry, they're hurting economically. I think we cannot lose sight of that. And that was kind of the cornerstone of Bernie's campaign, was focusing on inequality. And I think that issue is very deep in this country. You have folks who just, even though, under Obama, the economy did grow and we improved the unemployment rate tremendously, it wasn't, you didn't see the increase in wages that we need to see, with long ways to go. People are still very much hurting, and they wanted to send a message to the system that it's not working. And that's why a lot of people voted for Donald Trump. So I would encourage you, we need to have dialogue with Trump supporters. We need to be talking to them about these issues, doing education. Unfortunately, a lot of the education that happened in the campaign was some outrageous fake media stuff on the internet and other places. So, a lot of work needs to be done, just basic education on the issues. I think opening up dialogue with people who don't think like us. We can't live in a bubble. We've got to be talking with folks who don't necessarily think like us in terms of politics.
Phil, that is something we're actually moving towards, especially in Franklin County, because it is very much Trump area. Is that something you guys would ever be willing to join in a community conversation on, or have someone from your staff attend and things like
Sure.
that?
We do have to, like Phil mentioned, there's a difference between the policy shop and the political shop, but we have to maintain a firewall. Phil and I are both political designees, so we can legally do political stuff, but we really have to within an office, so we can engage. We just have to be careful how we do it. As you're, as the Trump supporters, we had a lot more requests for inauguration tickets before the election results. Then afterwards it dropped off, but there were a few. So there are some, and Phil's right, we need to have a civil discourse. We need that more than ever. You can agreeably disagree. I look at Peter Welch in the U.S. House. There's someone who can disagree with someone, but engage in that conversation and try to find that place where we do come to agreement. And I just think as a nation, that's where our challenge is right now. To respectfully disagree, but engage in a dialogue where we can get something done.
And the other thing I would say in this time is, don't lose sight of a progressive vision on policy issues. And Bernie's always really clear about that. We cannot give up on the dream of a Medicare for all healthcare system, of moving this country away from fossil fuels to sustainable energy, to deal with the incredible threat of climate change, to getting rid of Citizens United, which is corrupting our political system with big money being able to buy elections. Those things are not going to be possible, sorry to say, in the next 2 years or 4 years, and that's why we need the political, electoral changes to happen. But we've always got to keep that vision in sight, keep our eyes on the prize, and not lose sight of that. I would just, it's going to be a defensive fight in Washington right now in many respects, but we've also got to keep our eyes on the prize in the long term.
Can we open it up to people
Yes,
who
please.
might have, do you want to start, Art?
Yeah, I'm one. Our wife's from Indivisible, Vermont. So what would you guys prioritize for the energy in this room to focus on? How can we help you guys?
Well, thank you for that. That's a thoughtful question. I think it's important for us to hear from folks. When people say, "Oh, you don't need to call Marine," and that's probably true, but it helps. It's important to be able to give him the numbers at the end of the day, showing how many people support what we're trying to do. I think John's point is an excellent one. Whatever contacts you have in other states, family, relatives, friends, in states where there's Republican leadership, trying to help get them organized is really important. There's some really nice tools that are coming out. We did this in Bernie's presidential campaign, just some great developers using web material. So, this 5calls.com, have you seen that? People can make 5 calls a week. Really effective tool. I would encourage encourage people to use that.
I guess my question is really focused on, well, how would you prioritize, of all the issues that are out there, how would you prioritize what's most important to help you guys? The ACA is certainly
I'll
a big
throw
issue.
one out there. ACA I think is right up there, right? You're talking 20 to 30 million people potentially losing healthcare, tens of thousands of people dying if they do what they do. And they don't have a replacement plan in place. What they're talking about now is really would be devastating to people who are covered right now. So I would say that's near the top of the list. Here's one I would urge you to focus on, and that is, and we're going to try to make this uncomfortable for Trump, because during the campaign, Trump said over and over again, much to our surprise, that he was not going to cut Social Security or Medicare. And of course, the mantra of many of the leaders in the Republican Party in Congress and of the appointees of Trump, Price, HHS, led the effort to cut Social Security and Medicare. So there's a disconnect there. And that's critically important. Bernie is going to be very, very laser focused on that, and really trying to hold Trump's feet to the fire on not cutting Social Security and Medicare. So I would say in any conversations you're having with other members of Congress outside of Vermont, or with letters, emails to people in the administration, not cutting Social Security and Medicare, making sure Donald Trump keeps his promise on that would be very helpful.
If I could just answer one thing, maybe some of you also didn't hear, this person was asking, what Five Calls is. FiveCalls.org is an app online if you like that kind of thing, and it will tell you can choose what topics are of interest, and it will tell you what the issues are, and give you a very quick way to organize for your calls for the day. So it's FiveCalls.org with the number 5.
If I could touch on two things. I flap my gums, you go down.
I grew up in Michigan, and I've been here for a few years and lived in New Jersey most of my life. I have family in Michigan. And one of the struggles, who voted for Trump? And I even grew up, conservative, but I kind of saw the light, before Obama was elected, that morally, you really do need a more liberal agenda, and it's not working. I guess what I get, and sometimes we're not educated enough to be able to respond. Like, I was talking to a niece on ACA, right? And she said, well, my friends here, the premiums are too high, we can't afford, they had to opt out. And so I think we need to be armed with the right statistics to be able to say, yeah, that's true, but this is the percentage of people that's the, because I wasn't able to really respond properly after that. So anything that you could point us to where it's really factual, statistical, not judgmental, would be awesome.
And you can email that to Art and I, and we can circulate that to everybody.
I'll give you a little bit of reading. This is kind of going into the book. If you ever read anything by James Carvell, he just always says Republicans kick our butts at barbecues. They come out and say, government's too big, it's inefficient. We go, yeah, blah, blah, blah. We take half an hour to explain to them why it's good. You're just blowing smoke. The thing with the Affordable Care Act is, so you're okay with a system where if you have a pre-existing condition, you can't get coverage? Or if it becomes expensive, like significant cancer surgeries, when you reach a cap, they shut you off. Your kids can't stay on until you're 26. Women pay more for health care than men and the policies might not even cover prenatal care. I mean, that's what you're taking away. And the thing about the Affordable Care Act, it can be improved. I mean, Social Security didn't come out of the box and be perfect, but we all want to keep it now. It can be improved, and it was a compromise. We've been compromising on health care forever. Last compromise was Medicare. If you're 65 and above, you get it. Before that, after that, kids up to 18. So we're narrowing that gap, and we haven't gone all the way to Medicare for all. I hope that eventually we get there. But we have allies that we might have not had before. In the Affordable Care Act, 31 states expanded Medicaid up to 138% of the federal poverty level. Now, I say 138, people go, what are you talking about? For the language you use, a single person, you make a little bit over $16,000 a year, you're covered under that. 2 people, $22,000 something. The family of 4, $33,000 some odd dollars. Not a lot of money, but that's who that Medicaid expansion is covering. 16 of those 31 states have Republican governors. John Kasich pushed back the other day, hey, don't mess with that. So it's using lay people's language. I always do that with their DC shop. I said, put it in terms that I can understand and I can tell someone about it. If you dive too deep, people's eyes glaze over and we lose.
Right.
So I think the language we use, we can get you data that you need to know.
That would be helpful.
Great.
But I would say
It's
don't
almost
get
like
into the
we
weeds
need,
too much.
when someone, you know, when my niece said that,
We
you know.
need like the elevator speech.
The elevator
right.
speech, right, but it needs to be kinda like, okay, when they say this is what you should focus on, cause everybody's gonna say, well, people are opting out, and, I mean, Trump said that, right, last night, that everybody's opting out cause they can't afford it, which is not totally true, obviously, there are a few that are, you know, so that's, I think,
that's, it making me think of the era when it was don't think of an elephant, and it was like, and everyone was like, you gotta read this, you gotta read this, you gotta read this, and it's like, what I'm hearing from people a lot is really wanting advice about how to talk to the family members, how
Yes.
to talk to my auto mechanic,
right,
how to talk to, and it's a highly emotional, we do need a guide, truthfully, I mean, and what was really helpful for me, I caught this little video clip of Bernie saying in a town hall meeting, saying, so, you know, do you know what's happening right now with Social Security and Medicaid? Well, no. So I just found myself in the moment with the auto mechanic in Fairfax saying, who voted,
Adam?
What's that?
Adam, or?
Ding, 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 ding.
That's where I get my maple syrup.
Love him, but so, trying to be all good. So tell me, what was appealing about the Trump campaign to you? I was able to hold on to this for about 3.5 seconds before I just went crazy.
But you know, that's important because
So-
my favorite neighbors are all pro-Trump, and when you hear their stories, at least you start getting why.
So it was like, you know, all this like, you know, border stuff and like friends in law enforcement and friends in the FBI and friends in security, and it makes me really, really terrified for all the people working in border and, you know, whatever. And it was, you know, and then there was a lot of upset about ACA because facing a fine for not signing up. Yet I need health insurance, so I don't really know what I'm gonna do. So, and that was my moment, but I didn't have that. I couldn't. I was at this point. I was so balled up, you know. But what I fell back on was my identity category. Say, Adam, you voted for people who are coming after my family, you know, as a gay family. You're coming after you. This is what you've done to me, which was very strange feeling. I never go there, but that was what I had left. You know.
Well, to give you an example, what did he say?
I don't want to go into the whole. He was not.
But talk with
He was
me after
embarrassed.
because
but-
we're starting to create
But
a
I
community
think,
talks
I
and
think,
want your
but I
input on
think that a guide, when I'm thinking about the era of don't think of an elephant and how everybody was training up, the truth is, we need a guide. We need to be able to say, it was great to be able to say, so do you know people? Because both my strong moment was, do you know people who rely on Social Security and Medicaid? Well, yeah. I'm like, well, you know, the ship is coming down, you know, or what about Leahy? You know, I mean, the things that our community absolutely takes completely for granted, you know, and they don't know the weeds because I mean, that Republican budget wipes everything out.
yeah.
You know, my household, we work in disability services and youth development, and so we're tracking totally different ends of the budget, and everything's gone. It's just, everything's on the table. We don't hear about that.
I would just like to
I'm gonna
caution
cut it
you
right there
that
for a second.
a lot of times,
Yeah, I know.
I just
She's
want to caution.
But then she's been trying to speak
Oh,
for
I'm
a few
sorry, I
minutes,
didn't
so,
see you here.
let's go you and then you, but please talk with me after, cause I'd really like to involve with the community conversations in Fairfax, especially cause we have so much in common.
Let me just say, you know,
Okay.
it sounds like you did a great job
Yeah, it
in
does.
engaging in that conversation, and that is really, really important.
What if I sit here shirt off?
Sit down. And you
I'm
were
only
saying,
trying to say, there's another side of that, and that is kind of like, I read a great article, and it's in my car, in the Harvard Business Review. It was by an assistant professor at Harvard, and he had a 10-page article saying, and very scientifically laid out, saying it's not gonna do anybody any good to preach to those who are Trump lovers, that you need to get the marginal voters. Those are the people that you can influence. And the way to do that, according to him, is to show Trump in a bad light in two regards. One, they all think he's such an excellent businessman. So if you can see him failing in that regard, i.e. perhaps he will get more press on this whole Russian involvement, or if he can, and it has to be done quickly, to show him in a bad light, with what he's believing in right now, and so, you know, I hear you, but I also think these people voted for him for a reason, and they're gonna turn a deaf ear to a lot of this, but the marginal people who voted, perhaps they just didn't want Hillary in, or, you know, they had other reasons. They're the ones that will change if they see Trump failing. So,
What you're starting to talk about is is tactics, and
Exactly.
people are going to have different views. I don't know that this is a meeting for a tactical discussion
I know,
about how
but-
to oppose Trump. There's going to be and I mean I think talking to other folks who don't think like us is generally a good thing to do. We got to turn out more people. We got to get more young people voting, right? Oh, he is. Listen, so we've got somebody who is going to join us here. Senator, how are you? Phil here.
Senator Sanders, hey.
We've got about 30 people here, Bernie, from all over the state.
40.
A lot from Franklin County. They're working with Indivisible and other groups and opposing the Trump agenda. We're having a good discussion.
Can you
Welcome.
see us? Yes.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. I don't have a whole lot of time here. We've got a Supreme Court nominee coming in the door. So, as a matter of fact, maybe you should ask more such questions. That might make it more
We would love to.
Thank you for standing up and fighting back for against a very, very dangerous agenda. And the way I see Trump's agenda is severalfold. On one hand, it is just a old-fashioned, reactionary, corporate agenda, which wants to give tax breaks to billionaires, which wants to decimate environmental legislation, which wants to defund Planned Parenthood, push forward the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which is what this gentleman who's coming in a few minutes will be about, et cetera, et cetera. And that's very bad. We got to oppose that in every way we can. But there is another thread of Trumpism, which is in fact even more dangerous. Because everything I've just described is what George W. Bush wanted to do. It's what conservative Republicans always want to do. Empower the rich and the powerful and cause more pain for working people. Nothing new about that. But what Trumpism is about is something a little bit different, in my view. And that is attacks on the judiciary, his attacks on the media, his belief that he alone, where's he here? That he alone is the center of power, is a frightening move toward a authoritarian form of government. And that is something that we also have got to be very cognizant of and to fight back. There was a statement last week by a congressman, I think from Texas, and the guy says, what the guy said, the United States Congressman, he said, well look, you're not going to get the truth from the media. The only place you're going to get the truth from is President Trump. That's a paraphrase, that's close to a quote. So in other words, we are moving into a strange territory. That's the bad news. Let me give you the good news. The good news is, I think all of you know, and what you are part of, is that what we have seen in the last many months, maybe most significantly in the Women's March, but many of you at the Women's March in Montpelier?
Yes.
I have not seen it.
Washington.
I mean, they literally closed down the state entrance because they couldn't get more cars into Montpelier. But that was taking place all over the country and in fact all over the world. We have been holding rallies around the country in opposition to the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, et cetera, et cetera. So you're seeing a whole lot of people mobilized who are now prepared to fight back. I think what Trump has told us is the old rules, the old political rules are no longer valid. He's changed them. And we've got to change it. We've got to respond to that by not doing the same old, same old. That's why I've been actively involved in trying to bring about structural reform of the Democratic Party, to make it a very, very different type of grassroots organization, which welcomes young people and working people into it. So I thank you very much. Phil, knows a whole lot about this stuff. He's been doing this stuff for his whole life. But we've got to bring people together. We cannot forget what our values are about. And it's the rights of working people, respect for our environment, women's rights, racial rights. We cannot for a moment get on the defensive. We got to keep pushing forward in a progressive way. So thanks very much, and we'll see you soon when I'm back in the room.
I think there's
Thank you.
one of our staff persons, absolutely. I mentioned, I told Maureen yesterday that y'all were coming in, and so we tried to find some time on the schedule. I'm glad he was able to do that. I didn't know for sure he was going to be able to, because he did have the meeting with Judge Gorsuch. Let me introduce Kathryn Van Haste, who's on the Senator staff. Katie works
Hi,
on
Katie.
healthcare, veterans issues, and small business issues. I don't know if you want to address some of this stuff that came up, sort of in terms of defending the ACA and progressive healthcare reform. Any suggestions in terms of resources or ways that people can get good information to share?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of great stuff out there. It's sort of sorting through it, which you guys kind of alluded to. Kaiser Family Foundation, Families USA, those are both really great national organizations that have national data, and then you can drill down to Vermont specific data. Some stuff even goes into counties, so there is some good stuff out there, but it can be sort of complex to wade through. I think the keep it simple stupid is the sort of word when it comes to healthcare. As the president just learned, apparently healthcare is complicated.
At least he learned it.
He did figure that out. I've been working on health policy for a long time, and I'm still learning new layers. So I think it's just appealing to people's core values. I mean, I learned from the best. Bernie always says when he approaches healthcare is a right. And I think that that's when you can reframe the argument, taking healthcare out of the idea of a commodity that you buy, just like going to buy a loaf of bread, it changes the conversation with people. That the fact that I have a job, the fact that I am a woman, the fact that, the fact of where I live shouldn't determine whether or not I have access to healthcare. And I think the other piece, for any of you who are in Montpelier on Saturday, you heard me say some of this, but I think it's important to decode some of the conversation right now. So when you hear people say things like access to coverage, Bernie said this in his debate against Ted Cruz, I have access to one of Donald Trump's $10 million houses, but it doesn't mean that I can actually afford it. And so what does access really mean? So when you hear the sort of conversation around access, is it actually access to care, or is it access to purchasing something you can't afford? Flexibility for states, that sounds great, but flexibility without money is not flexibility. And the only way that you actually save money with changes to Medicaid is by cutting it. So again, not real. And then, the other thing I would just say about all of this is, kind of talking about what we really want and what we really expect sort of as a society and as a whole. I think that we all think that if we can prevent disease, we're better off. And so if we can actually use clinics that provide primary care and have access to those resources, that's the reality of the situation that actually improves people's lives. And then if you have good health, you're more able to work, you're more able to, find that job, have secure housing, all of those pieces that sort of overlap and go together. But, I think we're in a pretty good position in Vermont, but I think it's important to keep having this conversation and to ask people questions. I think that that's the tactic that you took with the mechanic is a good one. I think if you just sometimes start rattling off like data and facts, but understanding where people are coming from and why they think what they think. And the last piece I would just mention is when Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is discussed, a lot of times it's like it's in a death spiral, it's a government program that's failing. A of all, Obamacare, as it's phrased, came straight out of the Heritage Foundation. This is a good Republican program, and it is commercially run. The exchanges are run by private, for-profit, largely health insurance companies. That's the Affordable Care Act. So yes, there's Medicaid expansion, but even Medicaid in many states is run by for-profit insurance companies. And so it's important to also sort of not cede some of those arguments, even to start by defending a government program. It's not a government program. You know, all that the government does is help subsidize it to for-profit companies.
Do you
So
have talking points of some of those things that you could email us, just kind of summarizing some of those points that we could share?
I can certainly send you resources. I can also sort of see what, you know, exists.
Even a few bullet points that you'd like to
Publicly,
that
we
would
can
be
get
really
you
helpful.
So,
That
yeah.
would be great. One other thing, does anyone here want to talk a little bit about the investigation into tax returns and the Russia connection, or is that just me? Because I think I'm very concerned. My family came here because of a little beheading situation going on in Russia. That's how we got here originally. They don't have a long history of treating people real well. I don't like this bizarre feeling that our president is Putin, which has been kind of what I've been feeling. I don't speak for everybody on that, but I got a little to the dark side on that one. I feel like if they can go up Hillary's hiney with the microscope over some emails, I want to see some tax returns. I want investigation into Flynn. Why did he work for the FBI? Why are they covering up for it? Why are they all tied to Russia? Why are they all tied so clearly to Putin? I want some investigation, and for our friends at the border who are all pro-Trump, I think it's very interesting that the FBI and the CIA are now turning on him. So I want to know what that's about. I suspect that there's a reason for that. Could you guys address pushing for investigation there and answer
I
these
would
questions?
like, maybe Mr. Tracy could say something about that, because I keep getting emails from Senator Leahy that say, you know, we're trying to get Jeff Sessions to recuse himself. What are the prospects for a special, all of
We'll
that?
see. In fact, Senator Leahy went to the floor last night and urged Senator Sessions recused himself. During the testimony in Senate Judiciary, when he was up for Attorney General, Senator Leahy asked him a number of questions on the record, one of which deals with what relationship did you have with the Trump administration or the Trump campaign? And he said, well, I was in support, but clearly it was deeper than that. And Senator Sessions also was one of a group of senators just before the election that wrote an op-ed suggesting that Hillary, Attorney General Lynch, should recuse herself from anything dealing with the Clintons because she had a 39-minute conversation with former President Bill Clinton. So, Senator on the floor last night referring to DOJ guidelines to where it's clear that there has been more than a casual relationship with a campaign, that Attorney General Sessions should recuse himself. And if not by that standard, he should use his own standard where he wanted Lynch to recuse herself because she had a 39-minute conversation. He had a year-long conversation with Donald Trump and helped design his policy. So if not by DOJ standards, by his own standards, he should recuse himself. So the senator has called for that. There's a lot of support, even in the House side. ISA, Republicans called for it. And the trick is it needs to be an independent investigation. So we as Americans have confidence. And like Senator Leahy said, no, I'm willing to work with the Trump administration where I can. But I want to be working with the Trump administration, not the Putin administration. We just need to make sure that there's that integrity in our election system. And Senator Durbin joined in saying this is an assault on our democracy. If we're going to have confidence in it, we have to make sure that they're not getting. So hopefully we'll get one.
Are the prospects?
It's hard, I can't predict it. Democrats will keep pushing, and Republicans, some may come on board. So hopefully we will.
You think the investigation will get some traction then?
I hope so. I'm an optimist by nature.
I hope so.
Well, we certainly know, right, I mean, and everyone knows this, that Russia was engaged in manipulating our election in a very serious way. All the intelligence agencies have put that out. So, you know, that's clear. The question is, you know, was there collusion? How much was the Trump campaign actually involved in that effort? So that's explosive to me. I mean, that's something that I would have thought had more traction with the American people, right? You have a foreign government that's not friendly to us, undermining our own election is just an incredible act and deserves
What is
investigation.
being pumped
and
down our
action.
throats is fake news. That's where the tractions go.
What about on the tax returns? Any traction on that?
I think,
Any
you know,
sense of that?
I think Elizabeth Warren has taken the lead on pushing that, and that they're not gonna let up on that. But again, they can't do it by fiat, so, there's gotta be some cooperation at some level among Republicans, and we'll see. It seems like, Senator McCain, has deep concern about, Russia's involvement in potential, collusion. So, we're gonna need a few courageous Republicans on some of this. Just to follow.
The White House is the public house. It's a residence of Trump, but he doesn't call all the action. But he has recently. He said in so many words, hey, New York Times, you're out. And there's 4 or 5 others that were given the door. Are you folks gonna be doing anything about that?
Well, this gets back to what Bernie was saying about, he's showing, I think, an authoritarian direction, right? Where you start limiting the freedom of the press. I think we're seeing some of that. How far he will go, we don't know, but that's why it's important to be mobilized, and the only way you stop that is by mass popular opposition to it.
To whom now?
Yes.
Well,
To whom?
Well, I think to Trump and the administration.
No, I mean, who do we appeal to, saying that we do not, we do not tolerate that? I mean, it's the same as what I tried to bring up as far as the tactical then to go on. And what about, the fact that we're spending millions on security for his extended family as they're going all over the world, conducting business? Who do we appeal to?
If I could,
No,
your
we-
delegation gets it. I mean, we're all pushing in different ways.
Yeah, right.
That's
We
where I
don't
think
want
you
to
go.
talk to you.
Well, we want you to talk to you're up.
I wanna talk to
But that's where you go to those states to where those members of Congress seem to be just going, well, it is what it is. I mean, there's an opportunity. This isn't the first time that the executive branch has flexed its muscles and where Congress has had to push back. So there is a need, but it's the difficulty of finding someone across the aisle to say, hey, come on, this is our institution.
But do
So
our
I do think that
voices
you're
matter?
feeding the outsider impression that's been waved in front of the press is all of a sudden we've got Vermonters campaigning in Pennsylvania.
I think you need someone from Pennsylvania calling the rep of Pennsylvania.
Right.
We love hearing from Vermonters, but some from Iowa calls, thanks for the call, but we all have this IQ system where a call comes in, we log it, we know what you said,
Right.
So you gotta reach to your friends and allies in other states too.
But it matters, the mobilization helps frame the discussion, right? I mean, it sets the parameters of the debate, right? I mean, having, 20,000 or whatever in Montpelier coming out and that happening across the country, it changes the way folks look at things. So the mobilization is critically important in blue states and red states.
Okay, we're gonna, this question, over.
Okay, thank you. Just going back to the investigation about their ties with Russia, am I hearing something a little bit different from both Senator Sanders and Senator Leahy? I believe Senator Leahy is asking for an independent investigator, and Senator Sanders is asking for the Senate Intelligence Committee to do the investigation. So, is there?
Honestly, I don't know if he's called for an independent prosecutor. I don't know the answer to that.
I've only heard him ask for the Senate Intelligence Committee to do the
Kenny, you know,
investigation.
I don't know the answer.
I'll tell you right off that I hope the answer to this question is no way, not possible. But to bring the voting issue back in-house into the United States, I'm very upset about purging voting lists all across the country, and the fact that North Carolina Republican Party boasts about how many African American people. Is there any indication, and in Vermont, there is any of that kind of activity going on? Because I don't want it sneaking in here when we hear about all sorts of money coming from the outside into the state. So just to really bring it home, any indication that voting lists are being
Secretary of State Jim Condos, I think, has been very clear that our election was run very cleanly, that there's not, hasn't been any tampering. I think you can feel confident that in Vermont, we have a secure, voting, situation. But the threat to voting rights, we've seen it, they've been gutting away at voting rights, you're seeing it in southern states. I mean, that combined with their gerrymandering, right, so, it's impossible for Democrats to win in some areas of the country, is deeply undermining our democracy, no question about it.
This is really a quick one for Mr. Tracy. I know that you just said that you tabulate calls and concerns. Do you know if the White House does the same thing?
I would assume they do, but I don't know, but all Senate offices and House offices, and our bosses are always seeing what the tally is, so I would assume they would.
One thing I would recommend to people then is I email President Trump every morning. I get up, I pour a cup of coffee, I see what horror I'm the most concerned about, and that's what I talk about. And I keep it short, it's like a paragraph. And I also, in my subject line, I'm very, very vague about what the email is about, because I don't want to be shut off. Several of my friends have tried to email, and their emails have come back, and all we can figure out is in their subject line they said something like outraged about XYZ. So I urge people to try that. It's president@whitehouse.gov. Thank you.
And the former administration did have a very detailed process for how they logged mail.
That's what I figured.
Theoretically, the capacity exists.
But it does seem like all bets are off now.
They can email the Trump organization or Ivanka directly and inundate their business office, but I don't know if that's really a good approach.
If I could, before we get to, just to throw in something, I think a lot of folks are, are new to the political world, maybe some of you not so much, but some of the basics, right? You got letters to the editor of newspapers, relatively easy thing to do, important thing to do. There are radio shows, they get lots of folks on the other side calling in Vermont, calling radio shows, being real clear about having a message that you want to get out. Organizing, in your own communities. It sounds like you're starting to do that. But I would not underestimate just, getting on radio shows and writing letters to the editor of newspapers.
You're saying on the other side of it. You're saying like more Republican-based or conservative. Is that what you're saying, or are you saying?
No, I'm saying that they
Democratic?
kind of dominate. If you listen to
So we
talk
can get
radio in
into
Vermont,
that.
yeah, I think it'd be important for you all to talk
And
about
I
those
would
shows.
say one other thing, our office manager mentioned to me, a lot of it too is just starting locally, where you can make a difference, not necessarily in a political, just things you can make a difference in your own community, because we all kind of focus on how do we solve the big picture, but the little things that you can do, whether it's someone needs housing or a kid needs to go to summer camp, I mean, there's stuff we can do at the local level to try to just enhance the communities that we work on, as well as most.
I want to say again about that, I think one of the biggest opportunities we have right now is because we are a blue state, but we have these red enclaves. If we can find a way to create dialogue and create a bridge here, then we can lead our country in that, and I think that is a very unique opportunity that we should not lose, we should not lose sight of. So I think we're going to be working with leaders and doing it.
Yes, I'd like to know, I wonder if you could tell us the position of Senator Sanders and Senator Leahy on undocumented immigrants in Vermont. What position are they taking with regard to undocumented?
Well, Senator Sanders and Senator Leahy both supported the last comprehensive immigration reform bill. And I think that the Senator would tell you that that's, what needs to be approached in a comprehensive way. And you have some 11 million undocumented workers in the United States, and that bill, which had some Republican support, created a pathway to citizenship for those folks. It makes no sense to the Senator. And he really got this on the campaign trail. Met with lots of undocumented, mostly Latina immigrants, and just heartbreaking stories. Kids who were born in this country whose parents weren't, and kids live in fear that their parents are going to get deported to Mexico and split families up. So his view is we need comprehensive immigration reform, a pathway to citizenship. Now, we've got a situation now where the president is moving in, and it looks like a very different direction. I think there was some time yesterday maybe he might try to move on some kind of immigration reform that right now, it's, you know, in Vermont, we have, what is it, 600 to 2,000, mostly, undocumented farm workers, in the state of Vermont, who provide very valuable work in the state to dairy farmers. And there's a great feeling that among those people and their allies and advocates that, ICE is going to begin rounding up folks. And under the Obama administration, I think folks know they had a priority system. So if you've been here for 20 years, you have a family, you have no infractions, they didn't go after you, even if you were undocumented. You didn't have legal papers. They prioritized, you know, felons and criminals. And there was, you know, under Obama, there were a lot of deportations, but it was among that class of undocumented workers. What we're seeing now, it sounds like, is much less discriminating if they're going after anybody who's undocumented. John, yeah.
My understanding is that there are temporary visas for migrant workers who are fruit pickers, but not for dairy farm migrant workers.
Yes.
That was part of the
That was part of the
bill that was passed, where we've been trying, this delegation's been trying forever to get visas for cows. You don't just milk the cows in the summer. I mean, it's like 7 day a week, 365 a year. Haven't had, that was included in comprehensive immigration reform. The House refused to even take it up.
And that was Senator Leahy's initiative.
Work to bring it a bipartisan vote out of the Senate, and like he says, to get the Senate to agree that the sun shines. Quite an accomplishment nowadays, but they were able to do that, but the House just wouldn't do. Now with President Trump saying something less, maybe there's room, who knows? And to Phil's point about the priority systems that they have in place, you know, they initially was targeting felons. There is judicial discretion that they can use. The anticipation and the fear is that it's going to be ramped up. The delegation has been working with a number of groups, trying to understand what the potential impacts could be. You've heard a lot of terminology around sanctuary cities as to whether you use that term or not. Could federal funds be impacted? There's a lot of legal discussion about whether that will violate the 10th Amendment and the 4th Amendment for probable cause. And so there's a lot of deliberation around that. We'll see what happens there. But, you know, we're all grandchildren or children of immigrants. We've got a long, rich history, and our bosses all feel that we are enhanced by that. And these people who are coming up, in Mexico, a lot of them are coming up to make money, send home their families. A lot of these families are coming up from where their children are being killed because of the gang wars and the, you know, what's going on. Boss just went down to Colombia to try to make sure the peace accord's going to hold. So it's a good thing overall. We understand what the state of Vermont's going to do. You've got a dairy industry that's just been, it's hard. That business model is hard to work. So trying to get that to survive has been a very difficult task.
What about the use of Vermont police departments to support ICE? Is that?
I think what the state legislature has done is pass out the Senate, things go to the House, but the governor, the attorney general, the legislature seems to cover that. And I am not a lawyer,
right,
but after reading this, I believe the interpretation seems to be by some that it doesn't, if there's not an affirmative action like a local, by a police department, they can't make them take an affirmative action. Right. I'm sure that if this administration were to try to enforce that, the state will push back. It would probably be challenged in court by states and municipalities on the 10th and 4th Amendment and I think the spending clause in Article 1. That's possible.
Right. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to the popular mechanic in
It's pretty popular.
Great mechanic.
But, and at the end, you did a great job. And I think, I dare say, a lot of us will hold our tongue because we think somebody who's got more bluster than us knows more than us. But we're all in this room because something's motivating us that we know is not right. So use that as your energy to speak to people. Get facts, obviously facts matter. But we all know.
There's too many people from Fairfax here for me not to say this. He didn't have bluster. I had bluster. I spied a sign in a closet. I brought it up. I don't want people going after him. He was embarrassed. He was mousy. You know, he was like my family's all over me about this. he did tell me an awful lot. I got a real insight, but just because we are a small community,
Yeah.
please don't
But,
be.
no, I'm just joking, I don't know
No, I
anything
understand,
about it.
but
Car
in Fairfax-
problems.
Clouds
my driveway.
We get it, you need your car inspected, we get it, we get
But
it.
you
I've known
guys
him for
get-
20-something years, that's
But-
why I did
Well,
that.
and you understand, my
Right.
favorite neighbors all support Trump. These are
Yeah.
fantastic people.
But-
These are the neighbors you want. So
Right.
it's
Uh,
that's
uh,
why I am so focused on we have to
I'm not saying-
understand and not
I'm
convert.
not saying argue, but I'm saying don't think they know more than we know.
Right, but they're
I
not
think
approaching
we
it that
don't
way
call
either.
in
I
the
mean, I
talk
can't imagine
radio
that.
shows because they sound like they're so definitive in their statements that if we called to challenge them, we'd look stupid. So the easy thing is to shut up.
That's a good point.
Well, I think it's okay if we look stupid sometimes to make a point.
Apparently,
And,
maybe the
and we're
president's-
all here because something's motivating us to do it. And I'm using that, and I hope I can share it and maybe get one other person talking.
We've been talking about reacting to all the things that we've been seeing and so much has been happening that we all have those worries, but I'm thinking about something that hasn't happened yet, which is a terrorist attack or some unfortunate event like that. After September 11th, we saw an abridgment of a lot of our rights under the Patriot Act, and I can imagine that under a Trump administration, something even more could happen, and there would be very little time to respond. So I'm wondering what our Senate delegation is doing to think of any way to shore up civil liberties or not abridge the Constitution under some of those war clauses.
Judiciary?
We've, been fighting
You're on
back. In
judiciary.
fact, the legislation that was put in place after 9/11, Senator Leahy was very concerned and made sure there was a sunset provision
Right.
in that. And the reason to make sure as it comes up for extension to improve it. And he voted against Pompeo, the CIA, because Pompeo seems to like the data collection
Yep.
more than most of us would. So again, it's constant vigilance.
Yep.
The Democrats will be very strong. I think there were some individuals who voted for some stuff after 9/11 because they felt kind of intimidated
Right.
about going to Iraq and things like that.
Yep.
But I just think we have to make sure that you have their backs because they'll stand up for it. But the Republicans control all three chambers.
Yes.
We don't set the agenda. We don't schedule
Yes.
meetings.
Right.
And that's the thing about the power struggle down there. So I think you have to pay very close attention to it. The delegation certainly will, keeping our eyes open, trying to protect electronic surveillance. And we've got a whole new world now where the protections haven't kept up with the technology.
Right.
And we're trying like crazy to make sure that they do. And that's where it's really important as Senator Leahy and Senator Warner have introduced legislation to put in statute what the composition of the National Security Council should be.
Oh.
To push back at what's going on with Ben and now where that will go. Who knows, and Mark Warner being ranking member of the Senate Intelligence, there's a guy who made his money off telecom, he gets it. So this is.
So let me just say, really, important question.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're gonna be dealing with that, I think. I think, Trump is exactly the kind of person to move very quickly, with Patriot Act type measures. Bernie was very proud to vote against the Patriot Act when he was in the House. He has said over and over again, you can, fight terrorism and maintain people's constitutional rights.
Yep.
Fighting terrorism does not mean you have to limit people's constitutional
how do we
rights.
get
So
more
that
Democrats?
he will be,
Hold on,
and I know the
two questions
delegation will
here.
be vigilant on that. And we're gonna need people to stand up and fight against an erosion of our civil rights.
You guys understand? Because
My question kind of just jumps on that real quickly. So, being here in Vermont, I kind of feel like blue state, the safety zone, and then hearing these stories, I think some of the violations that happened under the Patriot Act are already happening at our border here. Hearing about people coming from Montreal wanting to come to Burlington as tourists or coming back to see family who are refugees here. The fact that their phones are being searched and other things are occurring, I want to hear a little bit about that since that is scarily close to home here. And then also knowing as a traveler, white woman, I normally don't get profiled for anything, but I have people in my life who I care a lot about who would fit under those. And so how do we, two-part question, what is being done or addressed about that? And two, how can we inform those in our lives, our neighbors, our friends, our family, our coworkers about what their rights are and what they can do in those moments?
I don't know, John, I'll let you go. I don't have a great answer to that.
The delegation is inquired about what, to that particular instance that you were in, or what the skinny really was, and that's what went on. And it was news to me that, they can access your phone. Trump cut all the electricity. We're trying to find out what really are all the circumstances. And I just think that, part of it is we have to, it's a different world. And, Customs and Border Patrol have a difficult job. I mean, stuff is coming in from both borders. It just is around drugs and other stuff. I mean, we are not immune from something happening. We're lucky we do live in a bubble. So, part of it is they have a tough job to do. We as a delegation are just trying to find out, can you tell us what really we would like to know? Now, how much they'll tell us is yet to be determined. That's why you have nomination hearings about, the Department of Homeland Security. And I think Kelly, he kind of pushed back at Trump's immigration stuff, and we're not going to use the military, President Trump. But he's, pushing back at that. So we have experienced people who know where to draw the line. So it's going to be evolving. We'll just have to be smart. My son Patrick going to Europe. He's a white guy, curly hair, but he's growing a snarly beard. We said, Patrick, you might want to think about just shaving the beard. Whatever. Just trying to make it easier on you. So we all have to do what we can do.
Well, I just had another issue that I just wanted to bring to the light. There are so many issues, and I'm afraid that we're sort of getting issue shock, and and I'm scared about some of the horrible ones that might get left in the background. I am a local business owner. I'm also the chair of our local domestic violence agency. We currently have a president who is a sexual predator, cabinet members that are documented domestic violence abusers and sexual predators. And our president is talking about doing away with the Violence Against Women Act, which will greatly reduce the budgets, at least I can speak to our local agency. We will be having to get rid of programs. I came to this work because 15 years ago, my daughter, who was a teenager, barely survived with her life from a dangerous situation. And I just want to make sure that we are all being vigilant, that our senators are being vigilant.
Yes.
They are. Senator Nebraska, Republican Law, Chair, Senator Sherry, and Senator Leahy just sent a letter to the president pushing back and suggesting that I think you have brought Senator Mike Crapo, working with Senator Leahy, the last reauthorization, the Republican, but he had seen the impact going to domestic shelters. And so it's something that goes across the aisle, and it's having success. We're making some progress around the education, the prevention. So there's a lot of broad-based support for VAWA in particular. So we're already pushing back. I can't promise you, but we'll fight.
Keep fighting.
We
That's all we can do.
And on the broader issue of women's rights, right? I mean, there are attacks to reproductive rights, women's equality, and it's again equal pay, being vigilant, and being organized.
And domestic violence is not just a gender issue either.
Yep.
Just a quick question. I'm still confused about whether reaching out either by a call to the office or an email to, let's say, a Republican congressman because you want to support a statement that they've made or a stand they seem to be taking, does the fact that I'm from Vermont mean it won't even get counted in the totals?
You're talking about your Vermont delegation or another state?
Another state. So John McCain says something that I want to applaud.
We have Vermont calls and out-of-state calls, so it gets tabulated.
Does it have any impact at all, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends on the numbers, right? If you get 2,000 calls from out of state saying they are really upset about such and such, they'll pay some attention. And it's not, totally insignificant. I think it has some value.
And mainly I want to support what little signs I see of reasonableness and strength on the Republican side, because I'm not worried about what happens with our delegation. I am worried it's going to take some Republican help to do any of this, and I don't know how to manage that.
If I could build on that, look, for example, we got thousands of calls, a lot of them in support of Jeff Sessions from out of state. That good to know, but
Yeah,
You can take it with
One
you.
additional, can I just make another suggestion for you too, though? So every office, ours have the personal offices, which is the senator's office in Vermont and DC that represents Vermonters. Committees also have offices and staff, and there are phone numbers for every committee, majority and minority. And so if there's a particular issue that you're interested in, you can call those committees too, and the committee's job is to represent the country, not a specific state.
So you
that's-
call a
that's brilliant.
committee or you call
You can
each
call the committee.
individual?
Yeah, you can call the committee. So if there's a judiciary issue, you can call the judiciary committee.
Okay.
That's
good advice.
If I had to
Thank
market,
you.
I'm not trying to.
Maybe not
be
the
scary.
judiciary.
Calling the staff first in.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's what you
they'll
do.
I mean,
Tabulate.
when Bernie was chairman of the Veterans Committee, we tallied all of those calls that we got and helped folks keep track of. Yeah, because the job is the country.
And then this question we were waiting for, I'm sorry. Oh, and then, I'm sorry, it's everybody else.
Just to go back to undocumented immigrants and the sweeps, border patrols, I keep reading about these for-profit prisons, and there's a piece of me that really questions the motivation behind these sweeps to just fill them with bodies. I read an article where they were some were saying, we don't even have to go after criminals anymore, we can just take anybody and it's much easier. So what, that was in, I think, the New York Times,
No, this is a huge issue and, tremendous amount of money in the industry, and they are salivating right now to build more kind of prisons. Vermont is having a problem, right? We sent some of our prisoners out of state, having a problem getting a contract because of all these folks lining up to imprison undocumented immigrants.
And the Justice Department under President Obama
Right.
started to reduce the use of private prisons. Regional session has rescinded that. And I read a great article about a guy who was a criminal been time in jail, said, you're betting on me to do something bad so you can make some money off of it. The whole idea of private prison.
I'm gonna go to this lady and then to you, and then I think we might need to, or did you, okay, these three people, and I'm sorry, because they haven't spoken, I think, much, so you, and then I think we might need to wrap it, I think. Okay, you're first.
Me?
Yes, okay,
Oh,
you're raising your hand.
No, I was just,
Oh.
John had something to say, I was just pointing
Then
out
we'll go
that-
you, and then we'll cut it.
Well, all this is great, and, I really appreciate everything that you guys have said, and we're all saying. But the thing is that I think it's all, can be fairly impotent if we don't get other Democrats and independents in Congress. So the question is, how do we do that? So I get calls and emails from, different organizations that claim to be part of the DNC, and they wanna support something. And I wanna give money and support them as best I can, but I wanna make sure that it's going to the right place. So I want your suggestion on where do I put my plug, where do I put my emails, how can I support really the Democratic and independent people that are out there that can challenge the Republican Party in next year and the years after. That's what I want. So that
Well,
we're
this
not
is, again, this is getting into the political side a little bit. There's a bunch, you gotta check it out, find out what organizations align with your values and are doing the kinds of things that you like. I mean, I can name some of them, you all know them, MoveOn.org, right, does some great work. DFA, Democracy for America, based out of Vermont, Charlie Chamberlain's here, executive director. They do good work, they support progressive candidates for office. There was an offshoot from Bernie's campaign called Our Revolution. You can go online and find out about what they're doing. There's a group called the PCCC, the Progressive Change Coordinating Committee, something like that. They do some excellent work. And then there are the Democratic groups like the DSCC, right? It's Democratic Senate Campaign Committee. So they fund Democratic Party candidates. The DCCC, the Congressional Campaign for House candidates, that's within the party. And they raise lots of money. So you gotta find out, where you're comfortable, and then there's your local Democratic Party, Progressive Party, that you can certainly get involved with. So I think it's, with the internet age, you can find out a lot pretty quickly online, looking for progressive organizations. But those are some that.
There is one other thing. We have a small company that exports material around the world, and I have also concern regarding tariffs. That it's expensive to get some of the materials that we need so that we can service our customers. And if there's large tariffs coming from Europe or from Asia or whatever, it becomes very difficult for us to then compete. We'll have to raise our prices, which then gets trickled down to the consumer. So I have a concern regarding import but export as well.
We consider the whole issue of trade.
Okay, let's move on to you and then you.
Okay, just in terms of the future, which follows a little bit, on his thing, is that maybe we need assuming this guy's not gonna get impeached, we need maybe a new, amendment to the Constitution that says electoral college is no good and we don't use it.
So here's a group that you may want to check out if you're concerned about reforming the Electoral College. National Popular Vote, NPV, they're online. And see if I can briefly describe it. What they've done, they've passed legislation in some states that says, and Vermont has passed it, and what it says is that if there are enough states that agree to do this, where their electoral votes totaled together are 270 or more, then those states, then Vermont will give its electoral votes to whoever wins the national popular vote. So, in this case, it would have gone to Hillary. She won the so by that way, you essentially get rid of the Electoral College. If all those states that have equal 270 say they're going to vote for whoever gets the national popular vote, you essentially bypass the Electoral College without getting rid of it.
Now, I would encourage you though, to research the Electoral College and how it came to be.
Yes.
Because it appears cut and dry. The more you go, it can protect a small city like Vermont. So there's a lot more to it. It's worth, I'm still moderately confused.
And then our last question.
I wanted to share one thing that I'm involved in right now that might be something people want to think about. I'm part of Rights and Democracy, and we have a group in Addison, and we're going to be doing a panel discussion, and it's a very conservative area. It's Addison, Bridgeport, Orwell, that kind of thing. And the panel discussion is really just for information to talk about our universal primary care that's in Vermont, which is a first step. If folks don't know about it, they need to know about UPC, and also immigration, because there's dairy farms, apple farms, that kind of thing. So Allison Eastman, I've invited her in. We're trying to get somebody else more from a legal stand to be able to address questions, that kind of thing. My goal is to keep this very factual. It's not a political agenda, but the more we can educate people, and hopefully with UPC, if Vermont can pass that, we could be an example for the rest of the country to say, well, maybe we can't do the whole thing, of universal care, but let's start with primary care. So that's something that we'll be doing in the middle of March. So hopefully it'll work.
Well, email me and email Art and the other, and post on the Facebook pages, and we will circulate it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, guys, let's say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Sanders, because that was a lovely surprise. Thank you so much.
So if folks did not sign the sign-in sheet,
did anyone
please
not
do,
sign?
so we can stay in touch with you. I'll leave some
There's two
cards
sign-in
here.
sheets. Yeah, where's the second one?
Want to stay in touch with me, you can hand those around. And let me just thank you all for being engaged, and really strongly encourage you to continue your very active involvement. That's the only way we're going to turn this thing around. And the other thing that nobody really talked about is running for office, right? We've got school board elections coming up, city council, so, a lot of you would be great candidates at the local and state level, so, we need good candidates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You guys